A Florida father is behind bars, accused of running errands and drinking alcohol while his young son was left to die inside of a hot car. The little boy, just 18 months old, was reportedly trapped for hours as temperatures soared. Police releasing body camera footage of the moment that father was arrested. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kennedi Walker, and I'll walk you through the details. You're watching Law and Crime. Body camera video from the Volusia County Sheriff's Office shows the moment 33-year-old Scott Gardner was arrested, accused of leaving his son to die in a sweltering hot truck.
Scott, watch your step.
Authorities say Gardner left 18-month-old Sebastian inside the vehicle for nearly 3 hours while he got a haircut and then went to a bar. Sheriff Michael Chitwood not holding back.
This father is a human piece of garbage, and he's a lying sack of and he's exactly where he belongs to be.
Investigators say Gardner gave multiple false accounts of what happened that day. The witness statements painted a different picture.
He's there from noon to 2:40, so for 2 hours and 40 minutes, that little guy is inside that car. So he drinks his beers, he has a couple shots of Fireball, and then he comes out of the bar.
By the time Gardner returned to the truck, his son was already dead. But instead of calling 911, deputies say he drove to his mother's house and only then did he call for help. Police releasing the frantic 911 call.
How old is he?
A year and a half.
Okay. Is he breathing?
No.
You don't see any chest rising or falling?
Mom.
Hello?
He's not breathing. I didn't know. Hello?
Okay. Listen to me. Can you get him on a hard, flat surface?
A hard, flat surface.
Alright. Are you guys inside now? Because I've got units on the way there to you.
According to police, Sebastian's body temperature was 111 degrees. Deputies say the toddler was left in his father's truck with no air conditioning and that Gardner lowered the windows and had a small portable fan on, but it barely reached the child, leading to his death.
There's no logical reason why this little guy is dead. I don't think there's a penalty on this earth that could ever fit for the crime that was committed here.
But Sheriff Chitwood says it was what Gardner did after his son was pronounced dead that was disturbing.
What does he do? He picks up his mother and they go back to hanky-pankies for a few more cocktails, and they're there until almost midnight.
Gardner is now facing charges including aggravated manslaughter of a child and child neglect. As he's led away in handcuffs, someone off camera offers support.
Honey, I love you.
Love you guys.
But the response from authorities is immediate.
Goodbye, because you're not going to come back here again.
Gardner is being held on a $100,000 bond. Sheriff Chitwood had this final message for him.
My hope for him is every night when he closes his eyes and every morning when he opens his eyes, his son Sebastian sits there and says, "Dad, why did you do this to me?" Because there is no reason for this little boy to be dead.
This is a Law and Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients weren't properly warned about this risk. It's free to check, takes just a few minutes, and you don't pay unless they win. So scan the QR code on your screen, click the link below, or go to forthepeople.com/LCDepo to see if you qualify. And here to break down this story with me is criminal defense attorney Kathleen Bogenschutz. Kathleen, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just jump right in. What a horrible story out of Florida. We know that Mr. Gardner is facing aggravated manslaughter and child neglect. How serious are those charges in Florida, and how many years is he facing if convicted?
Both of those, so the aggravated manslaughter of a child and aggravated child abuse, those are both 30-year felonies in Florida. It would also not surprise me if they were going to a grand jury to indict him on first-degree murder, because one of the things that we have in Florida is a felony murder statute. So if you commit a homicide while you are in the course of committing one of these enumerated felonies. And it's not every felony, but it's if you're in the course of committing aggravated child abuse and the child dies in the course of that, you can be charged with first-degree murder. So even if there was no intent to kill the child, if you were engaging in a felony, a lot of times you'll see it charged. Somebody robs a bank and a teller ends up getting shot. That's, while you're in the course of this robbery, somebody dies, that's felony murder. It wouldn't shock me if they're going to a grand jury to get that indicted. Of course, in Florida, the only way to proceed on a first-degree murder is via grand jury indictment. There's no way to charge that at the prosecution level. So oftentimes you'll see people, even just in your run-of-the-mill homicide, be charged with second-degree murder and then have that upgraded to a first-degree murder once the prosecutors have had the opportunity to present that to a grand jury.
Is aggravated manslaughter treated differently when the victim is a child?
So aggravated manslaughter of a child is the charge.
Okay.
So, usually a manslaughter charge would, for example, DUI manslaughter is a second-degree felony. Aggravated manslaughter of a child is a first-degree felony. And then, of course, it can also be the predicate felony for a felony murder charge, which is what I think may be happening here. They do have a certain number of days to proceed forward with that. I think they need to have the indictment within 30 days. So it's something that we could see pop up here in the future once this state attorney's office has the case and they've done all of their investigation.
And police say that the suspect gave multiple false accounts. Could those lies open him up to additional charges like obstruction or misleading police?
Yes, they could. You could see him be charged with obstruction or making false statements. For example, we have like Kaylee Anthony laws in the state of Florida that if you make a false statement in the death of a child or the disappearance of a child, there's additional ways to charge you there. Really, what that shows is that he knows he did something wrong. It's consciousness of guilt, right? That the story keeps changing. There's only one version of the truth, or maybe you tell it a different way, but it certainly doesn't change the way his story changed.
And according to police, this wasn't, one of the tragic stories that we've covered before of a parent who just forgot their child in a hot car. He allegedly went drinking. Does that change how the law views his negligence?
Yeah, so I actually have a friend who participated in an amicus brief, amicus meaning a friend of the court brief, on the hot car deaths. And usually it's a parent who's kind of on autopilot on their way to work. And maybe one parent always drops off the child, but today it's a different story because the kid had a doctor's appointment or mom's going in late or what have you. But they deviate from their usual course that morning and the child ends up getting driven to work and left in the hot car. And the premise of this amicus brief that my friend wrote is that, there's no mens rea to commit any kind of offense against this child. A lot of us can get to a point where I don't remember driving to work today. My car drove itself here, but I certainly didn't get into a car accident. I'm pretty sure I didn't run any lights because it's just muscle memory at that point. And usually that is how we end up with one of those really tragic hot car deaths where a child dies in the backseat of a car and there's really no intent there. This seems to be a very different scenario, although I will note that the car seat appears to have still been a rear-facing car seat, so that the child would have been facing towards the back of the vehicle because the guidelines these days are that the child should remain rear-facing for as long as you possibly can before you flip that car seat to face forward. So I suppose that might form a little bit of a defense there. But I have a child that is the exact same age as this child, and they are chattering and loud, and it's usually a fight to get them to go down for their nap in the afternoon. Just me as a parent, I don't see the child falling asleep in the car seat for that long, at least my kid.
Absolutely. And I feel like this is something that we talk about more and more every day, just about these hot car deaths, which are so unfortunate and so tragic. What kind of legal responsibility do parents have when it comes to leaving children in vehicles, even if it's just for a few minutes?
Well, depending on where you live, it certainly is more dangerous where I am in Florida in the summer than it is in Alaska in the winter. You may have an other direction issue there. Cars can heat up, I think it's like 10 degrees a minute when the AC is off and the car is sitting in the sun. You almost have like a mini greenhouse effect happening in the vehicle. And children's temperatures can skyrocket. I think they said this little boy's temperature was likely at least 111 degrees at one point in time. And that's not survivable. So in leaving a child in a vehicle for any period of time during the summer is inadvisable. We have a rule in my house where the kid comes out first and the kid goes in last. So basically, the groceries or whatever, kid comes out first, basically screw the ice cream. If you just came from the grocery store, kid comes out first, kid goes in last. And if you get some melted ice cream out of it, then that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Right. And I think that's some great advice there. And the sheriff, like how you mentioned, said that the child's body was 111 degrees. How powerful is medical evidence like that to prove criminal neglect?
So extremely powerful. But I think that what would really shock people and anyone who listens to this trial is going to be how quickly that likely happened in a vehicle. That, leaving him in there for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you're already getting to the point where this kid is heating up and heating up and heating up and is not doing well in this car. Also keep in mind that small children don't regulate their body temperatures as well as we do as adults. And the fact that this child is harnessed into a car seat, probably with padding around it. So, where you or I wearing a t-shirt and shorts in the vehicle, we might be able to kind of dump heat off of our arms and off of our back and, move around a little bit. This kid is basically strapped into, and usually a dark colored car seat. It's really shocking how quickly this can occur. And what I also want to say as a parent, because I used to prosecute these kinds of cases, and I used to advocate for not charging parents in the scenarios that we're describing, where it appears to be a genuine error, that there are multiple ways you can try to prevent this in your house. I thought to myself, because I'm always listening to a podcast or listening to the radio and I'm distracting myself from myself most of the morning, as the coffee kicks in, there's one way to do this is if you drive with your right foot, take your left shoe, put your left shoe in the back seat with your child. Put your phone in the back seat with your child. Do something like that will cause you to look in the back seat at all times. I even managed to put like an Apple AirTag when my daughter was very, very small, when we were bringing her infant seat with her to daycare. I even attached an AirTag to that infant seat, and we would leave the infant seat with her at daycare. And then I set up an alarm, because my husband was usually the one that did the drop off, but I set up an alarm on that AirTag when it arrived at daycare that it would message me. And if it ever arrived at his office, I would get another alarm. So,
wow, that's really great advice here. And with technology,
right, we have the technology.
Yeah, I think it's important that parents use that. Unfortunately, in this case, it seems like how we mentioned, just more neglect than just what appears to be, a regular accident. And I think what's important here is the timeline that the sheriff kind of drew out, that this father allegedly went to get a haircut. And you would think that would be bad, that he left the son allegedly in the car during the haircut. But no, after that, he then reportedly went to a bar. His defense might argue that he cracked the windows and used a fan. I know that's something that police said that the suspect allegedly told them. Does that hold any weight legally?
To me, that means he knew the kid was in the car. You don't turn on a fan and crack the windows. Maybe you'll crack the windows. It's Florida. It's really hot. Maybe you do that for your own comfort, but you certainly don't turn on a fan when nobody else is in the car.
Could he argue maybe it wasn't the best decision to leave my child in the car, but, at least I rolled down the windows, or at least I had a fan going on my son?
I think the best defense in these cases is I didn't realize my kid was in the car, like the forgotten child thing, where we deviate from our general morning routine and mom doesn't realize she still has the kid in the car. In this case, I think that might even lead to a faster conviction, because there can be no question that he knew the child was in the car. There can be no question that he was turning on the fan
That makes a lot of sense. And it seems like the evidence is overwhelming in this case. Police have body camera video, 911 calls, and witness statements that, reportedly place him at the bar while his son was in the car dying at that point. How does that multi-angle evidence shape a prosecutor's case?
Well, I think you're going to see quite a bit of the body cam. And let me also say this, that first responders who respond to these kinds of cases are usually fairly upset by them. And we even saw that in the sheriff's press conference, that he was pretty upset about this, as he should be. Most normal parents would never do something like this on purpose. And that's what that fan there, to me, the fan being on, the fact that you could show on the body cam that there was a fan in the back seat with the child, and maybe there's surveillance outside the hair salon or the bar that would show him cracking the windows and maybe turning on the fan if it's a battery powered fan. I mean, that's all intent there to me. And this certainly isn't the kind of case that I would have advocated not to charge. I'm just saying that usually these are just horrific, tragic scenarios where the parent had no intent for anything bad to happen to this child ever, much less what occurred.
And the sheriff said that Mr. Gardner went back to the bar after his son died. Can a jury take post-crime behavior like that into account, or will it be argued maybe he was grieving?
I heard that he picked up his mother and went to the bar.
Yeah. That's what police said in the press conference. I heard that too.
I just think it defies comprehension that you would go back to the place where you were when your son died later that day and continue drinking, as opposed to bring flowers or, sit there and mourn. If I were his lawyer, I'd be looking into some kind of please tell me he's an alcoholic and we can try to claim this is a medical issue. It's probably one of the less sympathetic things I've ever seen a defendant do in a criminal case. I can understand wanting to drink after finding out a family member has died, but I can't understand needing to go back to a bar where that person died and maybe not even participating in the investigation.
Could mental health or substance abuse be raised in court as mitigating factors?
Sure. I just don't know. I mean, this case occurred in Orlando. I don't know how long this gentleman has lived in Orlando. I was born and raised in South Florida. Now I live in Tallahassee, where, just similar temperatures over the summer. Let's put it that way. It is beaten into our heads, from the time we are small, that hot cars, summer, dead kids. And every year you still see them. So I don't know how, unless he was completely divorced from reality. And that's why turning that fan on is so devastating to this case for him, because clearly, I don't know if the voices were telling him to leave this kid in the car, but something told him to turn on that fan. Mm-hmm. So it does appear that he was comprehending that it was going to get very hot in that car and that he needed to do something.
The case is clearly emotional and the victim is a toddler. So because of this, what kind of impact does that have on jury selection?
Well, I as I said, I as another parent, I think I would be quick to not judge a parent who I think genuinely accidentally left a child in a vehicle, because given the number of safeguards I put around my kid, I knew that I could potentially do that too. But in this case where you're turning on the fan I think is the most devastating thing in this, not the cracking of the windows, because people do that all the time in the summer in Florida just for their own comfort when they get back in the car. So, but the turning on the fan to me is just that is the nail in the coffin here.
Right. And even more so, when jurors hear things like the father was allegedly taking fireball shots while that baby was sitting in the hot car dying, just how hard is that for a defense team to overcome?
I think it incredibly difficult. Now, it's not against the law to drink if you're a parent. It's not against the law to go to a bar if you're a parent, but it's the turning on that fan for the kid in the back seat while you go into a bar with the car off. Not that I would suggest you leave a child in a running car either, but that's the thing that defies comprehension to me. And I think that any other parent would be extremely judgmental of anyone who does any other person. I mean, I don't think you need to be a parent. All you have to do is live in the world, and the jury that they pick is going to be other Floridians. So anybody born and raised in Florida who's lived here for a certain number of years knows how many times we see on the news, do not leave children in cars, do not leave pets in cars, seeing people break out windows to save a dog that was accidentally left in a car in a parking lot. Picking a jury out of Floridians is not going to go well.
Could this go the plea deal route, or are prosecutors likely to push for the max?
I don't know if it's going to go a plea deal route. I don't know how reasonable this person could possibly be, given his actions that led to the child's death and his actions afterward, even after he realized the child was deceased and going back to the bar. So a lot of this, and I do criminal defense now, a lot of this is having really tough discussions with your client. If you're the defense attorney, going through the evidence and saying, you turning on that fan, it's bad. That shows you knew that kid was in there. We can't try to argue that you didn't know the kid was in the car. There's a lot of really difficult discussions that you need to have as a defense attorney. So I would imagine that the state would make some sort of offer to them if he was amenable to taking it. I just don't know if, given his actions in this case, I can't imagine that he's going to do something that's logical in conjunction with continuing forward in this prosecution.
Right. Well, this is a story that we will be following closely. Kathleen, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Sebastian's family raised more than $2,800 in donations for his burial. On GoFundMe, they wrote, "Sebastian's spirit and bright light will forever remain in the hearts of all who knew him and loved him." For Law and Crime, I'm Kennedi Walker.